Welcome to a Community Partners interview where we explore the organizations, opportunities, and resources that look to make change in our daily lives. I'm your host, Davy Au, and you're listening to Voices for Ability Radio. All abilities, all the time. Today, I'm joined by Samantha Cooper, the founder, CEO, and head trainer of Ability Dogs Canada. Ability Dogs Canada offers agency-trained service dogs, board and trained service dog programs, as well as trainer-guided service dog training. Their organization is a Canadian service dog school that provides services from coast to coast. Thanks for joining us today, Samantha.
Thank you so much, Davey, for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure. To that end, to begin this interview, why don't you tell us and our listeners a little bit more about yourself? What inspired you to create Ability Dogs Canada, and why work with individuals with disabilities as a whole?
Oh my goodness, this is going way back in time to when I had my second child. And she was born with some different medical challenges that created a lot of seizures and really awful types of challenges. And I remember putting her on a wait list to get a service dog. And I was told that it would be a 7-year wait. And I knew that I needed to do something. Being a mom, moms tend to like to get things done. I went back to school and I got all of my credentials to open up my own school and be able to service not only my daughter, but also the community that would be also waiting on long wait lists. It was just not a lot of options. So I created an option.
And that's absolutely amazing to know. And that extra motivation to get things done, I can definitely relate to you on that end as well. And that being said, in terms of getting things done, after creating Ability Dogs Canada, and in preparing for this conversation with you today, I did a lot of looking into a good amount of looking, I should say, into the organization. And on your website, I was just floored by all that I found. On the one hand, you've got autism support dog, seizure alert response, medical health or PTSD, and mobility support dogs. My gosh, I am so sorry for just rhyming that off or getting lost in all of that. It was just amazing to look at. But do you think that you could give us a little insight to what each of those entail?
Absolutely. So many of our clients have dual diagnoses. So sometimes they may have PTSD and seizures or autism and seizures. And so we are very aware of the different challenges, and we want to make sure the dogs are trained for, multi-level type work. So for example, a person with autism, whether it's a child or an adult, they have difficulties quite often with social type situations. They may need deep pressure therapy. They may need transition help. So going from one classroom to the next with as little of stress as possible. So our dogs can assist in that sense, where they're kind of just that there's that buddy beside you that doesn't judge you, is there to help. And we can use little games and tricks with children with autism who, say they don't want to come in from recess. And we have little games where we have the child get a cookie from the inside of the school to give to the dog. And it gives them a little motivation to go in, right? Once we get them in, we're good. So there's a lot of little games we play to encourage, that individual need to get things done. Now, for our seizure dogs, we train dogs to detect seizures before they happen. So that is a really neat thing because we work with scent. So the body gives off a pheromone, kind of like an aura when a person is going to have a seizure. And so we teach those dogs to let us know that they smell that pheromone, and that gives the person a chance to either sit down or get off the staircase or, whatever. And like I had mentioned, my daughter has seizures. And I remember a funny story one time. I had trained her first dog, River, and she was about 7 or 8 years old. And she was playing Nintendo, and the dog alerted. And I said to my daughter that it was time to turn off the game because River was telling us that, her brain needed a rest. And she turned it off. She turned to the dog and she said, "You snitch." And after the word snitch came out of her mouth, the seizure hit. So it was really neat to see that we had that safety. And I mean, she definitely didn't finish the level of the game she had, but she was upset about it. But dogs don't lie. They are trained and they just don't lie. Like if you finish the level or not, they're just going to tell us there's a seizure coming, right? So that created a lot of really great opportunities. So my daughter was then, as we had that alert, she was able to have a bath by herself without mom sitting there waiting and hoping she didn't have a seizure. If she did have a seizure in the tub, the dog was trained to grab the chain on the plug and pull the plug, so at least there's no water. So these are things that we had trained a service dog for seizures to do. Now, mobility is obviously another one where people in wheelchairs, people using walkers, canes, any kind of mobility type stuff. So we use the dogs for balance. We use the dogs for picking up items to give to the person, so they don't have to bend down, because sometimes some of our clients they can't bend down. So it helps with that as well. Going all different places out in public, they have that little bit of assistance. And which brings me to another funny story. I had a fella in a wheelchair, and he was waiting for a bus, and he dropped his little bus ticket, and the dog picked it up and gave it back to him. And he was pretty amazed, because that would have been a disaster had he not been able to retrieve that bus ticket. So these dogs are just an amazing addition to people who have challenges. The diabetic alert dogs work the same as the seizures. We work on scent, and so they can tell of highs and lows. So yeah, that's a little bit of the Coles Note version of some of the dogs and what we do.
No, of course, and it's great to know that these dogs are trained in so many different ways, and the scent part was absolutely the scent part. Even this is the first time I've heard of the body giving off a pheromone in a sense. That's an absolutely amazing tidbit to know. But that being said, taking the focus more towards our canine friends for just a brief moment, do you think that you could give us an insight to what the process is like, on how they are trained, on how the dogs are trained, and how they become service dogs, and how long, perhaps maybe how long it takes to train them?
Absolutely. So we usually like to bring our pups into the program between 8 and 10 weeks of age. So they're very young. We use high quality registered breeders that provide the best dogs that we can get. So we have primarily Labrador retrievers. We have some standard poodles and a few other different types of breeds, just so that we can accommodate different people's lifestyles. So the whole first year of the puppy's training is all about desensitizing them to pretty well everything, stores, sounds, sights, smells, absolutely everything. So we depend on our foster families, who are volunteers that work around the clock to help us out. So they are amazing. They bring a puppy into their home, and we provide a puppy and training jacket, and off they go to, whether it's work or school or grocery shopping, anywhere like that, to get them out there and used to the world, because there's a lot of crazy things out there, especially around Halloween. We want to make sure that the dogs are not nervous around strange things around Halloween time, different costumes and stuff. So we do a lot of the desensitization. We have group classes every week. So the pups come to the classes, and every class is different. We're teaching them all of their basic obedience, but we're also teaching preventative training. So we want to teach the dogs not to start a habit like jumping up. So we do, four paws on the floor when you're petting the dog. So we want to teach everybody that preventative training, so we don't have a problem later. So, it's a great way to do it. So all of our training is positive reinforcement training. We don't use any spike collars, choke collars, e-collars, or anything of the sort. We want to make sure that our dogs are treated with respect, and they want to do their job. They're not afraid, and they want to serve their person, right? So that's a big part of Ability Dogs Canada is the positive reinforcement training. Now, so they're in the program. It takes approximately 2 years to fully train a service dog. So the way our program works is all of the dogs basically go through the same program until they reach about 18 months. And around that time, we make a decision whether they're going to be going into the mobility dog section or maybe servicing somebody with seizures, but we have to look at them as a dog and what they would be good at. So for example, sometimes we have a Labrador that doesn't get as tall as the other ones. That dog may not be good for mobility because of they're a smaller lab. So we would not put that dog into a mobility position because they may be better at something different, right? So we want to know what they're good at before we decide where they're going to go. And from there, once we know what section of the program we're going to have them in, we then start doing the special skill training. So whether it's pushing the access buttons or picking up items and giving them to the person or going and asking for someone to help, things like that. So it's quite a process. And once the dog is placed with their person, the person does approximately 120 hours of team training, one-to-one with a trainer and the dog. And because we service across Canada, we have a virtual program that also can be used because it's very difficult for somebody to travel all the way to Ottawa, get their training in 120 hours and go back and have no support. So we are always here for them. We maintain ownership of our dogs in our agency program so that we can make sure that they're being treated well and, that their training is kept up to par. And training never really ends. So people's lives change and somebody may have a life change that we need to come in and sort of do a bit more training. Like, for example, say somebody gets a little kitten and all of a sudden they're having an issue, we need to go in and help with that. So the training is always kind of maintained over the time that they have the dog. And we anticipate the dogs working for around 9 years or so, depending on their health. But that's why we use the breeders that we use so that we can hopefully have the best and healthiest dogs possible.
Of course. And on the note of dogs themselves, you mentioned that you said Labrador, and that got me thinking so much about this next question. On the one hand, as we discussed prior to our interview beginning, I know many a veterinary technician, some of whom live with black labs or poodles or whatnot. And then my background, having come from community safety and public safety, I've seen police forces favor the German Shepherd and now more recently the Belgian Malinois. That being said, what breeds of dogs do you normally train to become a service dog? And to that end, can just about any breed of dog become a service dog?
Well, it depends on what the service is that they're providing. Again, if you need a mobility dog, you wouldn't want a smaller breed. So we want to make sure that we bring in dogs that are kind of more common for service work. So our favorite are the Labrador Retrievers. Everybody loves a Labrador. They're very resilient. They can be homed very easily where, whoever is feeding them, they will bond with. And the standard poodles are also lovely. They're not as easy to transition to their new home. They get a little bit sad, and that's really heartbreaking sometimes. So we are very gentle with that transition. So the person that would be getting the dog would spend time with the dog over time and then slowly transition with regards to the Labrador Retriever. They just want their food bowl and they're happy whoever feeds them. So that's, a bonus as far as that transition goes. We do now for us, we stay away from the toy breeds and the smaller breeds. Not saying that they aren't good service dogs. It's just for us, we worry about their safety. They're down low. Are they going to get hit by a shopping cart? Mind you, there are many, many service dogs that are small breeds that are wonderful. And we just chose not to bring them into our program. It doesn't mean that they aren't good for other people or other programs. So it's just the safety side of it. So We've got, different breeds. We do have German Shepherds. We have a few of those as well, and they're absolutely wonderful. Our veterans really enjoy them. They're just a beautiful dog. They're very high energy dogs, so they wouldn't be able to go with somebody who isn't able to give them that exercise. So having different breeds in the program really helps us to match our dogs properly with the lifestyle of the recipient.
Of course, that makes total sense. And now, based on the recipient of the dog and then the dog itself, what are the laws for service dogs? For public places, stores, restaurants, places of that nature.
So in Ontario, we have almost no laws whatsoever. It's really causing a problem because there are sometimes people will buy a service dog jacket online and put it on their pet and take it out and say that it's a service dog. Legally, you are required to have a doctor's letter that states that the recipient is in need of a service dog to mitigate their medical challenges. So that's the only, legally, that's what you need. Now, for us, we take it another step and we give our own access letter. And our school logo and name is on the jackets so that people realize that these dogs are in a program. All of our dogs have public access. They can fly on airplanes. They can, go into any stores. There's just a few places that a service dog can't really go, and that would be like an operating theater where food is prepared in a restaurant, things like that. So there are, a few restrictions, but they can still go to restaurants, and the recipient can eat at the restaurant. And so there's not a lot of places that they can't go.
Of course. And now, speaking of restrictions, are there any restrictions to being able to get a service dog? Perhaps age, caregiver, things of that nature? Any restrictions?
So we definitely have some restrictions, and it's on a very individual basis. So a lot of the time, we have to look at the family lifestyle. Does the person have support? Do they have the ability to take the dog out and care for the dog? Are they able to feed the dog? Because it's a lot of things to take into account. We do work with people that have mental health challenges. So we do ask that in their letter of reference from their doctor that we ask for is this individual capable of caring for a dog? So it's very important to us that, they have the ability. So if you're working with somebody who's really struggling and just has a hard time caring for themselves, it wouldn't be fair to place a dog with them to have that extra responsibility.
Absolutely, and of course, that would make total sense. And on that note, without naming any names, just on a more positive note, without naming any names or getting too specific, are there any success stories that you could share with us today about someone who breezed through Ability Dogs Canada's doors and where they wound up now?
Absolutely. I have so many stories, so many stories. And I think I'll start with a PTSD veteran that reached out to me a number of years ago. And he was really struggling. The PTSD was a daily challenge, and he had pretty well given up. And he reached out. He didn't think that he would qualify, but we talked about it, and he did qualify. And we trained a dog for him. And funny enough that you would ask this, because I received an email from him this morning just thanking me and telling me that because of my ability to know how severe the PTSD was, and that, believing in him and continuing to try with him, because he had his hard times where he didn't have the motivation to do some of the work that needed to be done for team training. But then we would meet him where he was at. But the email that he sent me today was thanking me, and he told me right out that he wouldn't be here today if it hadn't have been for the service dog that we placed.
And that is absolutely heartwarming. Absolutely heartwarming.
It just gives me the shivers.
Book worthy, even too, if you think about it, movie worthy, even that story. But that being said, in your opinion, this is my favorite question to ask just about all of the people that I've talked to since coming onto the show. What is one thing, in your opinion, what is one thing you see happening repeatedly to individuals with disabilities that shouldn't be, and how do we collectively go about stopping it?
Wow, there are so many to choose from. I'm going to talk on the service dog side of it.
By all means, that's why we're here.
It frustrates me that my clients still have challenges with people approaching them to pet their dog. We need those dogs to be working and not being petted or spoken to. And what's happening sometimes is people pay attention to the dog and they can miss a cue for a seizure because they're being distracted. They could miss a high or a low for sugar diabetes. And when in public and in jacket, a dog is working, and we have started an education program to help people understand what do I do when I come across a team, meaning a dog and a person. This person is still a person. If you feel like saying good morning, say good morning. You just talk to the person. You just, I don't talk to your wheelchair. You know what I mean? And the dog is just as a medical device, just like a wheelchair. I don't pet your wheelchair. So it's got to stop, because I'll use the example of PTSD. So I work with a lot of people with PTSD, especially my veterans, and having somebody come up to them in a store and say, "What are you using a service dog for?" That is a personal question that shouldn't have to be even asked. It makes that person uncomfortable. It singles them out. And all they want to do is go in and get whatever they got to get from the store. So my goal is to help people understand, when you see a service dog team, please ignore the dog. It's not something that you should be interacting with at all. Yes, they are cute, and many times they'll come up to me when I'm working a service dog and say, "Oh, your dog is cute," but I'm trying to do this training, right? And I know the dog is cute. I appreciate it, but please ignore the dog.
Well, that's good. That's good advice to know, and I'm sure that our listeners will do their best, their level best, to keep that in mind. Now, that being said, for any of our listeners out there who want to be a member or volunteer with Ability Dogs Canada, what would the respective processes be like, be it to join on as a member or become a volunteer?
Well, there are so many volunteer programs here that can fulfill different volunteers' needs. So we have our program for high school students, where they can get their 40 hours and they can work with the dogs in class, or they can come and help us at one of our fundraisers. There are different things that they can do. Then we have the actual foster volunteering program. So that's approximately 24-month commitment, 18 to 24 months, depending on the dog itself and where it's at for its training. So that is that one is like, our fosters are the heart of our program. We wouldn't be able to do it without. So that is I would say it's one of those volunteer programs that is 24/7. So it's hard to find people that are willing to do that. Then we come to our volunteers who are kind of respite fosters. So when our fosters want to go away or they need a little break, we have kind of our pet sitter volunteer fosters. So there are many different levels of volunteering that we have available. So that's the volunteer side. And then if people are interested in the programs we have, now we spoke about our agency trained program, where we get the dogs, we bring them in and we train them, and then we place them. But we also have the ADC Agency Assist training program. So we brought this in so that people who were having a hard time waiting for, like, our wait list right now is between 2 and 3 years, which is still a lot, but we can't make dogs mature quicker. You know what I mean? Like, you got to go through all the steps. So in some cases, it's ideal for a family to get their own puppy, and we help them choose that puppy so that it's got it's the right breed and the temperament, and then they go through our training program. So that's another section of our program. But as far as the volunteering and, getting involved, depending on what program, everything is on our website as far as how to apply. And then people also could call us or email us as well.
Of course, and that brings us neatly to one of the last question that I have for you. If our listeners are looking for more information, be it on your programs, on volunteer opportunities, things of that nature, and more, how can they find you? How can they reach you?
Okay, so our website at www.abilitydogs.ca is active right now, but it's under construction. We are revamping it all so that it's a lot more user friendly and will be easy for everybody with all abilities. So please bear with us on our website because we're still uploading some new stuff. But you can reach us through there. And you can also reach us by email at info@abilitydogs.ca, or you could phone us at 613-484-8502.
All right. Well, that's absolutely fantastic to know. Thank you so much again, Samantha, for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. That's wonderful to meet you guys.
And the feeling's mutual. And with that, everyone, we've reached the end of yet another amazing interview segment. You're listening to Community Partners, presented by Voices for Ability Radio. All abilities, all the time. I'm your host, Davy Au. Be safe, be kind, and I'll see y'all next time.